Good morning. Let me tell you a little short story this morning. I'm not really a writer or anything, but sometimes I can be a good storyteller. Let me know what you think. You can comment down below. So this is the story of Tommy and Susie. They prefer not to be called white trash or rednecks, though the people that live in the control cities often call them this. They travel from place to place where there's openings in the few hotels that are left in the outskirts of what hasn't been destroyed of the control cities, and try to stay one step away ahead of the plagues that seem to keep happening more and more often. The newest plague takes the form of extreme exhaustion, collapse, and then the person's veins pop up along their main limbs, mainly their legs and arms, and wiggle like a snake until they explode at some weakened point and the person slowly bleeds out. So Tommy and Susie, they travel around in their litter-filled van from bits of food and discarded items that they find along their travels. But they've gotten lucky. They've found a hotel. The hotel was once a grand place for fancy people with money to come and vacation, to go swimming and shopping, and that the days of the grand hotel have long passed, and now the concierge stand has dusty, black, old, moldy looking plastic flowers that are long past their fake beauty. So Tommy doesn't believe in working, and Susie believes in working too much. She does her best to take care of him with what they have. Tommy prefers to drink, dabble in drugs, and gamble, thinking work is for fools, and staying one step ahead of the plague is his only goal and his next high that he can get to escape his nightmare life. So Tommy and Susie, they've got a room, if you can call it that, in this shabby hotel where there are other survivors of the plague with nothing left but wandering from place to place as well. And they've secured themselves a spot for a short amount of time. Now, Susie doesn't know it, but Tommy is indebted to a Chinese man who has set up a gambling ring in one of the spare rooms. And with him, with the Chinese man, he has his son, who is his strong arm and enforcer to collect debts, and a woman that nobody is quite sure her relation to either of them. She looks too young to be the old Chinese man's daughter, and doesn't seem to be the son's girlfriend. So people aren't sure, but they don't speak English, so nobody knows the relation of the young, beautiful woman. The Chinese folks sometimes dress in beautiful, elegant, silk-type clothings that seem super elegant and out of place to the others in the hotel. But he does run a gambling ring, so maybe that's how he affords these fine threads. So it's Susie's birthday, and Tommy's in trouble because the Chinese man is expecting his money, and Tommy is way overdue in paying his debt. It's Susie's birthday, and Tommy has nothing for her. And they're sitting in their shabby, dark room because there's no electricity, but there's light filtering in through the dusty curtains, and there's a knock on the door. And the Chinese man comes in, and with him comes the young woman with her head ducked down low, and Susie notices that she's very beautiful and seems out of place with these two. And the son has a very stern and angry look on his face. Well, Tommy walks over and whispers something to the man and then turns to Susie and says, "Happy birthday, baby. I've got a surprise for you." And she doesn't understand as she looks at these Chinese folks and the excitement on Tommy's face. She doesn't see a gift, so she doesn't understand what's happening. So the Chinese man says something to Tommy, and Tommy tells Susie, "Go into the bathroom and take a shower." Now, there's no hot water, but Susie's dirty and she's happy to get clean, and it is her birthday, so she thought she'd freshen up. So she goes into the bathroom and starts taking a cold shower, and she strips off her clothes and is just getting into the shower when the Chinese man, his son, and the beautiful Chinese woman come into the bathroom, and she's startled and starts to panic. And Tommy says, "No, no, no, baby. This is your birthday present. Just relax." But Susie feels strange, and she looks down, and as the water's starting to run down her body from stepping into the shower, she notices that she's got blood dripping down her leg, and she doesn't understand where it's coming from. And Tommy rushes in and holds her, cradles her like a small child, because she's not much bigger than a child. She's so malnourished and tiny. Well, the Chinese man and the young woman start to dab away at the blood on her leg, and they sort of help cradle her with Tommy as she collapses on the edge of the tub, and the bleeding sort of stops, and the Chinese man and the Chinese woman, she notices, are wearing gloves, and the Chinese young man with a fierce look on his face just stands with no emotion in his eyes or on his face, standing off to the side. The young lady, Susie, she starts to bleed again, and there's a spot above her ankle, about halfway up her calf, that starts to spray blood, and Tommy puts his hand over it, and the bleeding stops again, but the blood has gotten all over the beautiful silk clothes of the Chinese woman, and she's startled and wants to leave the bathroom. But the old Chinese man, who's half cradling Susie, says, with a look of his eyes and shake of his head and a stern look, instructs her with his eyes to not leave, and she starts to caress Susie in a sexual manner, and Susie's eyes get big and she doesn't understand what's happening, and Tommy whispers in her ear, "Baby, relax. This is your birthday present." And she doesn't understand, and she's very weak, and the old Chinese man that's half cradling her pushes Tommy out of the way and takes his place, and he starts to fondle her and play with her body, and Susie's collapsed and she's not quite awake and doesn't understand what's happening, but it does seem very exotic. So she's in a half stupor and just relaxes as the old man starts to manipulate her body, and Tommy says to her from the doorway, "Baby, relax. This is your birthday. This guy is from an ancient family, an ancient, powerful dynasty, and he's gifted in the talents of love making, and he's really good at this. This is your birthday present." She doesn't understand because she's so weak, but she just relaxes, and it does feel nice. It's been so long since she's been caressed and treated kindly that she just relaxes. And as she fades in and out of consciousness, the Chinese man seems to be enjoying himself as he manipulates her body and instructs the young Chinese woman to do the same. The Chinese woman seems reluctant, but she does as she's told. Well, soon Susie reaches a climax and sort of crumples into a ball, and the Chinese man has a devilish grin on his face as he sets Susie down on the toilet and nods at the girl and the boy to leave, and discards his gloves, throws them on the floor, and leaves himself. And Tommy doesn't know what to do because Susie's now unconscious and barely coming to at this point. She started to bleed out the holes in her legs and her arms, and in an act of desperation, Tommy wraps her in a dirty old blanket he rips from the bed and tries to carry her to the van so that he can get some help, because the people have started to gather and they're screaming at them to leave, that they're not welcome in the hotel any longer. Tommy's crying and Susie's bleeding out into the dirty old blanket, so he wraps her up like a child and starts to put her into the van. He opens the side door, and as Susie fades away and everything turns to black, she looks down at an old Chinese fast food menu that's amongst all the rubble and litter in the van. And on the side of it, it says, ancient Chinese proverb, we cannot become what we want by remaining what we are. And the scene fades out.